Okay, this is going to start our second unit for our first semester. This unit is on cells and they're the structures we find inside the cells and the functions of those structures. So you will want to refer to chapter 4 in your book for this information. So cells are organized in a particular way. So we can have organisms that live as just one cell. They are unicellular. Examples of unicellular organisms would be protists that are like amoebas or paramecium that live in the water. Bacteria are unicellular. Some yeast is unicellular. Some fungi are unicellular. But then a lot of the cells that we're going to be talking about live as a multicellular organism. And as a multicellular organism, the cells come together to make tissues, and tissues are cells that carry out a specific function. So everything has its own job. That tissue have its own function, and a group of tissues together are going to form that organ that also has a particular job to do. And then you have all several organs come together to make up the organ system inside that multicellular organism. And all of those things are just specific jobs. So cells are different in multicellular organisms depending on their job. So first we do need to come up with what is a cell, and that goes to our cell theory. So notice down below in the picture, we actually have two different scientists who contributed to cell theory. They're writing papers, and those papers then get put together and combined to create what we would call a theory. So in cell theory, we would say that number one, all organisms are composed of one or more cells. Number two, cells are the basic units of structure and function of an organism. So that's what a cell is, right? It's the basic unit. And then three, cells come from only the reproduction of existing cells. So that actually goes with the video that I'm going to have you watch about spontaneous combustion. As some used to believe that cells would came from like rotting meat, right? Suddenly you have rotting meat and then suddenly you have flies. So we used to believe that maybe cells came from dead things, but now we know cells have to reproduce and only come from other cells. Now, cells are stuck at a certain size. So many of us might think that the larger you are, the bigger your cells, but that actually is not true. So it's not the larger you are, you just have more cells. And there's a reason for that. And that has to do with surface area. So surface area, remember, is the outside part of the cell compared to the volume. So area is length times width, where volume is length times width times height. So the surface area of a cell is important for carrying out all the cell functions and acquiring nutrients and oxygens. A small cell has more surface area compared to, which is the word relative, to its cell volume. And therefore, it's more efficient. That just means everything's going to be faster. A large surface to area volume ratio allows small cells to quickly and effectively exchange materials, obtain the nutrients and oxygen, get rid of waste with their environment, and then also quickly and effectively distribute materials within the cell. So it's all about speed. And if you cannot get rid of your waste fast enough, if you cannot get oxygen and nutrients fast enough, then as a cell, you die. So too big of a cell really causes a death of the cell. Now, when we come up here and we say a large surface to area volume ratio allows small cells to do this, when we say large, if you're comparing these three cells, the largest surface to area volume ratio is this first one. It's 6 millimeters, 1/millimeters, but it's 6. And that is the smallest cube. It has the largest surface to area volume ratio. And then the largest cube has the smallest surface to area volume ratio. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about large. Having a large number here means you actually are smaller here. So just keep that in mind. I'll probably create another video on this. But I did want to talk about, again, when you talk about cell size, the largest animal on planet Earth today is a blue whale. Some say it's probably the largest, but I think we found a few dinosaurs that could beat out the blue whale. But you might think, well, that blue whale, it must have huge cells, right? That would be a concept here. And here's some of the dinosaurs, and I think Titanosaur might be a little bit equal there. But let's just talk about the blue whale. So there's a aquarium that has a blue whale heart that's made out of plastic. And as you can see right here, the people are big enough to fit into the blood vessels of the blue whale's heart. That's how big it is. It's actually kind of the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. Huge heart. But how big are its blood cells? Its blood cells are the exact same size as the smallest mammal in the world. So the blue whale, which is the largest mammal in the world, over 100 feet long. Then here is the least shrew, the smallest mammal in the world. If you notice that it's fitting on the size of the thumb, just about the edge of the thumb, that's as big as it gets. They both have the exact same size blood cells. So that shows you cells stay small, even if organisms get big. Now, there are two kinds of cells out there that you're going to learn. First one's prokaryote. Pro means first, so it's the first cell. Prokaryotes, by definition, do not have a nucleus or what's called a membrane-bound organelle. So that's going to get a little crazy. We're going to have to make sure we can distinguish those. All bacteria are prokaryotes. And another type of old bacteria called archaea is also a prokaryote. That's it. So if I ask you, is an animal a prokaryote? No, because the only thing that's a prokaryote is a bacteria, and that is interchangeable. So sometimes I'll say a bacteria, and I know you should know prokaryote, or I'll say a prokaryote, and you should know bacteria, like goes backwards and forwards. So with bacteria or prokaryote, what do we find? We're going to find a plasma membrane. We're going to find some place in the middle that has the DNA, but it's called a nucleoid. It's not a nucleus. It's not membrane bound, which is the big key here. It has cytoplasm, which all cells have. It has ribosomes, which all cells have. And it has enzymes. Remember, enzymes are proteins that do the chemistry, which all cells have. They have smaller ribosomes than eukaryotes, and that's actually what makes them susceptible to antibiotics. But they do have ribosomes because ribosomes are just a protein, so with RNA. And then we have most have a cell wall. So most, not all, have a cell wall. It's a different kind of cell wall than the one we're going to talk about with plants. And then they might have something called a flagella, which is the tail out here. Again, we'll go over that with the animal cells as well. So this is a picture to learn and to know. The cell wall is always on the outside. The plasma membrane is always right inside the cell wall. So it's the circles because it's surrounding the cell. The nucleoid is where the DNA or RNA is found, somewhere floating in the cytoplasm, but usually somewhere together. You have the dots, which are going to be ribosomes. And then the cytoplasm in a picture like this is always the space. But remember, we will define cytoplasm in the next unit or next lecture. And then we have a flagella, which is a long tail to help it move in water. Now, eukaryotic cells is everything else on planet Earth. Everything else on planet Earth. If you're not a bacteria, you have a eukaryotic cell. And the eukaryotic cells have a nucleus and membrane bound organelles, which we're going to spend 3 lectures going over because there's a lot of them. So everything else on Earth, animals, plants, fungi, protists, which are the definite, those are kingdoms. All of those things have eukaryotic cells. You, human being, are in the animal kingdom. You have this kind of setup in your eukaryotic cells in your body. So now it's time for you to complete Notes Review 1 and our cell size lab.